You started your own business to be your own boss, but are you really in control? The answer may surprise you. In this video, I will discuss subtle ways you may be losing control of your company. Welcome to Dave Talks Business.
We have Dave Kramer, the founder of All Pro Web Tools.
Dave has worn many hats over the years as a small businessman.
Well, I really feel that small business is the core of the American economy.
Amen.
I'm sure you've heard the phrase, I before E except after C. There's another phrase that helps to remember the different positions on a compass. Never eat soggy waffles. And twice a year when we change the settings of our clock, we will hear spring forward, fall back. These are all examples of mnemonics. Mnemonics have been used as far back as ancient Greece and Rome, as they found it to be an effective way to make abstract concepts relatable and memorable for the human mind. In my office, these are commonly referred to as Daveisms. In this video, I'll be talking about Daveism number 1, who is in control. When your phone goes off, do you jump or are you in control? Do you have customers who are constantly pulling you in different directions in your business? Are your employees pulling you, calling in sick, bending your company policies, or failing to follow your instructions? Do you have clients who are canceling appointments? These are all examples of you catering to others. So who is in control? There are some key phrases that customers will typically start a sentence with when they're trying to get you to make an adjustment just for them. Typically, they'll start a sentence with, I know that, or can't you just, or would it be possible to... These are your signal that they're about to ask you to change your policy. If any of this sounds familiar or you have experienced this, can I just get a yes below in the comments? Now, if you change your policy for one customer, this can cause a lot of problems for your business. The first problem is that your staff is typically going to be trained for one specific way of doing things, and if you make a special exception for this client, your employees are going to be less efficient and a little bit more confused on how they're supposed to treat this client. Some of those adjustments may even spill over to another client who you have not approved for those adjustments, at which time your employee is going to say, well, we did it for the other guy, why can't we do it for this guy? Another thing that could be a problem is that once you make that special concession for that client, they might go and tell their friends, hey, I got this really good deal and this was how it worked. And so now you're going to have other people coming in expecting the same treatment. The third problem that can develop from making a special concession for a specific customer is that it makes your processes inefficient. You've probably already designed your business and your structures to accommodate a certain way of doing things. And now that you're making a concession, there are things that are going to come up that are unexpected. There's going to be ways of doing things that are going to have to change, and it's going to interrupt the flow of your entire business. These are the reasons why you probably aren't going to want to make special concessions for one specific customer. Now, I will counter this statement by saying if you're finding that customers are repeatedly coming in and asking you to make an adjustment to your policy and it's the same adjustment they're all asking for, that might be an indication that there's an opening in the market, that there's a demand that you need to fill. So you're definitely going to want to consider that as a potential pivot for your business. Now, if you think about it, what you're actually creating is a new product or service with its own pricing structure. This means you should take the time to outline a new SOP describing how to provide that service. You should create a new price for it and a new product name. Maybe it'll be the gold version or the platinum version of the product or service that you offered previously. But this serves to differentiate this new product or service pivot to both your employees and your customers. So I also mentioned when you're at the beck and call of your employees. If your employees are causing you to change your schedule or change your plans for the day, they're not actually performing as an asset to you and the company and in a way of making things easier and making things more efficient and giving you less to do. If you're finding that you're having more work to do because you have to check all their work, or because they're constantly calling in sick, or because they're not following company policies, this is a time when you're going to want to very seriously consider some employee discipline, which I will be covering in a separate video. Now, when your staff is trying to get you to make concessions, some of the trigger words or phrases that you'll hear in the beginning of the sentence are going to go like this. Would it be all right if, or can I take next Wednesday off? If any of this sounds familiar or you've experienced this, can I just get a yes below in the comments? Now, here's my suggestion for dealing with these. Again, who's in control? If they're asking you for something, it's perfectly reasonable for you to ask them for something. So if they say, would it be all right if, you can say, sure, that would be fine. By the way, do you think you could get that project finished for me today? And there's an implied agreement there that if they get the project done today, then it'll be all right for them to go ahead and get whatever it is that they asked for. It's implied. Now, when they ask for a day off, it's up to you, but one thing that you can do if you have somebody who's consistently asking for days off is go ahead and agree to it. Say, sure, you can go ahead and take Wednesday off. Do you think you can make that day up on Saturday? You'd be surprised how quickly they'll stop asking for Wednesdays off. The point is, when an employee or a customer is asking you for a concession, ask yourself, who is in control? I'm really surprised how many times I talk to business owners who tell me that their employees just simply refuse to use the management software that the company has provided for them. It's also very common for salespeople to refuse to use the CRMs that are provided and instead to write everything on paper or to keep stacks of business cards on their desks. These business owners tell me that their employees are blatantly just refusing to follow SOPs and refusing to use the software and organizational tools that have been provided to them. Who's in control? You've got to put disciplinary procedures in place. If you have a company handbook with disciplinary procedures and you don't follow through on them, then who's in control? We've all heard of employee training. When you train a pet, you reward it for good behavior and there are repercussions for bad behavior. It is very much the same with employees. You have expectations and those need to be written so that it's fair that the employee was made aware of those expectations. I don't recommend doing this verbally because verbal communication is very inefficient and it's hard to refer back. You should also have SOPs, standard operating procedures, that outline exactly how tasks should be performed in the company. Another part of the training process should be supplying them with a copy of the company handbook, which should outline standards and expectations for behavior. It will also show the disciplinary steps that your company will implement. Now, when an employee is straying from the guidelines, it's very simple to ask them to read the relevant paragraph in your written materials. Then you can ask them if what they did is in line with that paragraph. I really like this method because it's really not confrontational. It's not a you versus them type of a situation. It's you and them looking at the materials that they already agreed to when they went through training. When training a new employee, to avoid the tendency to micromanage, I try to spend the first 2 weeks with them really closely, answering their questions, demonstrating how things are done, and really over their shoulder a lot for the first 2 weeks. But then after that, I take my hands off the steering wheel. I let them run free, and it's amazing how after 2 weeks, they think that, oh, I've got this, I understand everything, because I'm there helping them and holding their hand through it. But once I take my hands off, they recognize it very quickly, and they start asking a lot of questions and stumbling around and making mistakes, and that's all to be expected. I'm there to coach and guide them. I'm there to catch them when they fall. And they start to learn very quickly that they need to stand on their own 2 feet and figure things out for themselves. And this is how you empower your staff so that they are in control. If your team cannot operate without you present, how are you ever going to take a day off? This is going to necessitate your being present during all business hours and even after hours to take care of administration tasks. How is that freedom? If you're having problems with employees not following your instructions, or if you feel bad in implementing discipline, be sure to look for my next video on employee discipline procedures. If you work to empower your staff to be more in control and to have the ability to make decisions within their own realm of responsibility, this is going to free you up because now they can be more self-reliant as opposed to reliant on you. Now, this actually relates to Daveism number 3, which is don't bring me problems, bring me suggestions. This is another situation where your employees might not be thinking for themselves. If they come to you commonly with questions like, the client is asking for a refund because, or if they come to you and say, I couldn't find any blue pens. Or if they come to you and say, the printer isn't working. Or if they say, we're out of toilet paper. Do they really need to be coming to you for every little thing, for all these little mundane questions? I always ask them, well, what do you think we should do about that? Just respond to them. What would be your suggestion for dealing with this? Now, it doesn't mean that you have to follow their suggestion, but forcing them to start going into their mind and thinking about a way to resolve the issue is going to help them to be more self-reliant. Now, in the case of not being able to find any blue pens, is it really that important? Can they use a black pen? And if the printer isn't working, could they Google that problem? Have they tried turning it off and turning it back on again? If they're coming to you right away without even trying to make some adjustments, they're really no longer being an asset to your company. They're just coming to you and forcing you to have to jump up and run and take care of the problem. And that's when I have to ask, who's in control? Just a few weeks ago, I was coaching a client who would sit with their staff all day long. Their desk was actually right there in the room with their employees. And they were constantly being interrupted by their staff asking them every little question. So we talked about it, and the suggestion came around to maybe move the owner out of that office and across the hall into another office. I checked back with them just a few weeks later, and they told me that their staff was no longer asking them a bunch of very simple questions. We figured that was because the staff realized that in order to ask that question, they would have to get up from their desk and walk across the hall to ask the question. It was much easier for the staff to go ahead and follow the instructions they had been given repeatedly to just go ahead and Google it. Hey, thanks for watching. So how did I do? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have an idea for a video I should do in the future, you can put that in the comments too. I also have a free small business resource toolkit available on my website. You can find the link in the description below. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. And you can also subscribe right here. And there's another great video that will help your small business right here.